Chapter 1. Holiday Time. Laura and Max are twins. They live in London with their mom and dad. They always have interesting adventures on holiday. They visit different cities and countries. This summer, they are going to stay in a small cottage in the country. The cottage is in a village called Stone Cross, near Salisbury. Max and Laura aren't very happy. Boring, says Max. He looks at the map. The cottage is in the middle of a field. What can we do in the middle of a field? Why are we going there? Asks Laura. Their dad is very tired. He says he wants to relax and sleep a lot. Their mom loves the country. She wants to walk and paint. It's a very beautiful part of England, she says, full of culture, tradition, mystery. Mystery? Say Max and Laura together. Mystery. Okay, let's go. Chapter 2. Stone Cross. The next day, Uncle Stephen and Auntie Barbara arrive. They have lots of suitcases. This year, the two families are going on holiday together. Mom drives her car. Dad sleeps. Dad always sleeps. Uncle Stephen and Auntie Barbara follow in their slow old car. 2 hours later, they arrive at Stone Cross and find their cottage in the middle of a field. There are green hills, beautiful cottages, flowers, sheep, and cows everywhere. It's lovely, say Max and Laura. It's perfect, say Mom and Auntie Barbara. Dad says nothing. He is sleeping in the car. What do you think, Stephen? Do you like it? Uncle Stephen doesn't answer. He is looking into the distance. His eyes are very black and strange. What's the matter, Stephen? Asks Auntie Barbara. Don't you like the cottage? Yes, it's wonderful, he says. Come on, everyone. Let's take these suitcases inside. Wake up, Andrew. Dad wakes up. Where are we? We're here at Stone Cross. Come and help. We must take the suitcases into the cottage. They take the suitcases and go inside, but Uncle Stephen waits. He wants to talk to his wife, Barbara. I must tell you something, he says. His voice is very serious. This place... Yes, darling? This place is in my book. Do you remember the book I am studying about mysteries? But Stephen, that book is very old. It's full of strange codes and secret messages. Exactly. Don't you understand? This is the place where you... Come on, Barbara, come on! Stephen shouts Mom from the cottage. We're coming! Uncle Stephen and Auntie Barbara answer. But when they walk to the cottage, their faces are white. They look very worried. Chapter 3. Mr. Carter and Mrs. Black. The cottage is big. There are 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms upstairs. Downstairs, there is a big kitchen, a living room, and a study. Uncle Stephen wants to use the study. He must finish some work during the holiday. Uncle Stephen is a historian. What does Uncle Stephen do exactly? Laura asks. Her mother replies, he studies history. Max is confused. But I study history too at school, but it's not my job. Yes, but Uncle Stephen writes books about history. He thinks about history. He tries to understand the things that no one understands. For example? Asks Laura. Well, Mom replies. For example, the mystery of Stonehenge. So, what about Stonehenge? What is its mystery? No one really knows. Ask Uncle Stephen. Tomorrow we can go to see it. Suddenly, there is a knock at the door. Mom opens it, and an old man comes in. He has white hair and an angry face. "My name's Carter," he says in an angry voice. "I look after this cottage. Is everything okay? There is wood for the fire in the garden. There are sheets and pillows upstairs. If you have a problem, tell me. Have you got any problems now?" Mom remembers. Yes, Mr. Carter is the caretaker. He looks after the cottage when no one is staying in it. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. It's very kind of you, but we have no problems." Mr. Carter wants a problem to solve, so he is not very happy. He goes to the door, then he stops. Suddenly he turns around and looks at them. "Mrs. Black is coming," he says. "Mrs. Black is coming soon. Be careful." He opens the door and goes out. "What?" asks Mom. "Who is Mrs. Black?" asks Max. "And why be careful?" "Is she dangerous?" asks Auntie Barbara. "Probably a witch of Stonehenge," says Laura. Everyone laughs. "Don't talk about things you don't understand," says Uncle Stephen. There is another knock at the door. They all stop. There is silence in the room. Max opens the door. No one speaks. "Hello, everyone," says a happy voice. A woman comes into the cottage. She is quite old and fat, but she is pretty. She has blue eyes, silver earrings, and a big pink face. "Hello, my name is Mrs. Black. Mrs. Black is a housekeeper. She helps with the cooking and cleaning when a family comes for a holiday in the cottage. She lives in a different cottage in the village with her son. Mrs. Black is very nice," and they start to relax. Later, they eat a big dinner and then say goodbye to their new friend, the housekeeper. They are very tired, and soon everyone is sleeping. Everyone but Uncle Stephen. He can't sleep because he is thinking about the book. Chapter 4. Exploring the Village. In the morning, Laura and Max decide to explore the small village of Stone Cross. "Bye. Have a nice time. Come home for lunch at 1 o'clock, says their mother. In the square there is a post office, a baker, a greengrocer's, a newsagent, and some other small shops. "Let's buy something to drink in this newsagent," says Max. "It's very hot." A woman is working in the shop. They say, "Good morning," and smile at the woman, but she does not smile back. She looks at the twins with cold eyes. "You two aren't from Stone Cross. What do you want?" The woman is not very friendly. "2 cans of Coke, please," says Max. £1 60. She gives them 2 cans of Coke, and they give her the money. The woman's cold eyes do not change. "Tourists don't usually come to Stone Cross," she says. Her voice is cold, too. "It's not a good idea. Remember that." "Yes, okay, thank you. Goodbye," says Laura. They run out of the shop very quickly. In the square, the sun is shining, and everything feels normal again. "Wow, there are some strange people in this village," says Max. They walk along another street, and suddenly a man appears. He is not very old, and is wearing a dark suit and a tie with a strange design on it. The twins stop. The man smiles. "Hello," he says. "2 explorers in Stone Cross. Are you on holiday? Are you having a nice time? Yes, thank you, replies Laura. My name is Martin Knight. What are your names? Max and Laura Morell, they say together. Sometimes twins understand what the other is thinking. Sometimes they speak together. Morell? Is your father the famous historian Stephen Morell? No, he's our uncle, not our father. He's on holiday with us in Stone Cross. Do you know him? The man doesn't answer Max's question. I see. Stephen Morell is here in Stone Cross. Very interesting. And tell me, what is he studying at the moment? Oh, a really old book about mysteries and secrets, says Max. Sorry, Mr. Knight, but it's very late. We must go home and have lunch, Laura interrupts him. Come on, Max. It's time to go. Can we meet tomorrow? Asks Martin Knight. You can tell me about your uncle's old book. Okay, says Max. Come on, Max, says Laura, and the twins walk away. Sorry, Max, but I don't like that man, explains Laura. Why? He wants to know about Uncle Stephen and his books. But Uncle Stephen is very famous. Lots of people want to know about him. I know, but this man is different. I can't explain why. Not everyone is strange in Stone Cross. Think of Mrs. Black. She's a nice, normal woman. Yes, you're right, sorry, but now it's 1:45 and we must go home. Chapter 5. A Visit to Stonehenge. When the twins get home, everyone is waiting for them. Mrs. Black is there too. What do you think of our little village? She asks. The village is lovely, but some of the people are strange, replies Laura. Mrs. Black laughs. I know. Don't worry about the people. They don't see many tourists. Not many people come to Stone Cross. Are you ready to go to Stonehenge this afternoon? Asks Auntie Barbara. Mrs. Black says, Ah, you're going to Stonehenge. It's nothing special. A circle of old stones, that's all. Stonehenge is near the village of Stone Cross. They take the cars, and in 20 minutes, they are there. Laura suddenly shouts, Look! There it is! There it is! Down in the valley, they see Mrs. Black's circle of old stones. It's spectacular, says Uncle Stephen. It's incredible, says Mom. It's magnificent, says Auntie Barbara. Well, says Laura, it's not very big. Shut up, Max, says everyone. Andrew, what do you think? Do you like Stonehenge? Andrew, Dad, doesn't answer. He is sleeping in the car. Andrew, wake up now. This time Mom is very angry. Around the stones there is a fence. People can't touch them, but they can go very near and take photographs. Let's get an audio guide, suggests Mom. You listen, and it tells you the story of Stonehenge. Everyone gets an audio guide and starts to walk around the enormous stone circle. Uncle Stephen walks in the opposite direction, looking at his old book of mysteries. He reads something, then looks at the stones. Then he walks away and looks at the hills and trees nearby. The 3 hills around the stones, yes, it is a type of triangle, he says to himself. Then he looks at the stones again. Uncle Stephen is thinking. Half an hour later, the others return. Stonehenge is fantastic, they say. But Uncle Stephen is not listening. He is reading his book again and looking at the stones and the hills around them. "Time for something to drink," says Mom. They all walk to the small cafe near the tourist shop. "Come on, Stephen. Are you coming with us?" Finally, Uncle Stephen puts his book in his bag and follows the others. Chapter 6. Back to the cottage. The family finally gets back to the cottage. Everyone is very happy, but they are also tired. The sun is shining and everything seems in perfect order. They park the cars and go to the cottage. "That's strange," says Dad. "I can't move the key. I can't open the door." "Let's try the other door," Mom suggests. They walk to the small door at the back of the cottage. Suddenly, everyone stops. "The door is open," says Laura. "Impossible," says Mom. "Only Mrs. Black has a key." Mom and Auntie Barbara scream when they see inside the cottage. There is chaos. The cupboards are empty, the drawers are open, and things are scattered all over the floor. "Our money," says Dad. "My jewelry," says Mom. Uncle Stephen frowns. "What's missing?" "We must phone the police." They look in all the rooms, but nothing is missing. "Look, our money is here," says Dad happily. "And look, my jewelry is here. The thief doesn't want my diamond ring," says Mom. "So why?" "What is interesting for a thief here?" asks Max. Uncle Stephen's face becomes very serious. "I think I know the answer to that question," he says, and takes the book of mysteries from his bag. "That old book?" "But why?" asks Max. "I am studying the mystery of Stonehenge. Some people think that it is an ancient computer," Uncle Stephen explains. "I don't understand," says Laura. "Ancient people knew lots of things that we don't understand now. Things about the stars, energy, mathematics, and communication. We think that Stonehenge is an enormous computer. It connects information to other ancient computers around the world." "Like the pyramids?" says Laura excitedly. "Exactly. Perhaps these computers even communicate with spacemen," adds Max. Uncle Stephen continues, "My book of mysteries has a secret code, but there is a symbol I don't understand. I want to understand this symbol because I want to understand Stonehenge. This computer can be very dangerous because bad people can use the information. We must protect the book. Do you understand?" "Yes," they all reply. "Now let's tidy the house. Everyone must keep their eyes and ears open." "Yes," they all reply again. The twins are tidying the house. Suddenly Laura stops and says, "Max, look!" "What do you think this is?" She gives her brother a small silver object. It is round with a triangle and a strange cross in the middle. It's got a pin at the back. It's a brooch. "Yes, perhaps it belongs to the thief. Let's give it to Uncle Stephen." They tell their uncle the story, and he examines the small object. He puts it in his desk, his face serious. He doesn't say anything. Max and Laura go into the living room. "There's something strange about that object," says Max. "I know that symbol," says Laura. "Yes," says Max. "Me too. I recognize it. But where from?" Chapter 7. A Noisy Night. At 7 o'clock, Mrs. Black arrives. She helps cook dinner and listens to the story. Terrible, she says. Every summer there are thieves in Stone Cross. They know there are lots of tourists, you see. But you say that tourists don't come here, answers Laura. Oh yes. Oh, well, it depends. Some summers there are a lot. Some summers there aren't a lot. Mrs. Black replies quickly. Suddenly, a telephone rings. It is Mrs. Black's mobile phone. Oh, excuse me, she says and smiles at everyone. She goes to the hall and speaks in a soft voice. Yes, okay, don't worry. Everything's all right, I don't know. Perhaps tonight, perhaps tomorrow night. Okay, bye. My son, she explains when she returns. He's 27 and he doesn't know how to cook. Can you believe it? Mom laughs. I'm sure he prefers your wonderful cooking. Later that evening, everyone is playing cards together. Mom is winning. She always wins. Who wants a nice cup of hot chocolate? Asks Mrs. Black. During the evening and at night, it is cold in the house. Yes, please, Mrs. Black, everyone says. But Laura replies, no, thank you. The housekeeper seems offended. Why not? She asks angrily. Hot chocolate helps you sleep. I can sleep with no problems, thank you, Laura says politely. Mrs. Black is not very happy, but goes to the kitchen to make hot chocolate for the others. It is creamy, chocolatey, and delicious. This is wonderful, Mrs. Black. What is the special ingredient? Do you have a secret recipe? Asks Mom. It's my grandmother's secret recipe, Mrs. Black says and laughs. She says good night and goes home. Soon everyone is very sleepy and goes to bed. Only Laura isn't tired. It is the middle of the night. Outside the sky is full of stars, but there is no moon. Everyone is sleeping. Mom is dreaming, and Dad is snoring. Suddenly, Laura sits up in her bed. There is a noise. Someone is downstairs. She relaxes. It is probably her father. He sometimes gets up and sleepwalks. But no, she can hear her father snoring in his bedroom. She gets up very quietly. Yes, there is someone. The noise is coming from the study. She goes downstairs, moving as quietly as possible. When she reaches the study door, she stops and listens. She hears the sound of paper rustling. I must be brave, she whispers to herself. She pushes the door open quietly. Stop, thief! She shouts. To her surprise, she sees Mrs. Black sitting at Uncle Stephen's desk, reading his notebooks. Oh, Mrs. Black, it's you, says Laura. Hello, Laura. I can't find my car keys. Perhaps they're here. I didn't want to disturb everyone. Oh, all right, says Laura. But then she remembers Mrs. Black doesn't have a car. At that moment, Dad and Uncle Stephen arrive. They think there is another thief. Dad smiles and laughs. Oh, it's Mrs. Black. Hello, Mrs. Black. You're working late tonight. Uncle Stephen doesn't laugh. His expression is serious. What are you doing in my study, Mrs. Black? He asks firmly. Mrs. Black tells him the story about the car keys. Uncle Stephen replies, Tomorrow we can all look for the keys together. Now it's time to sleep. Good night, Mrs. Black. He opens the door and the housekeeper leaves. She doesn't look at Uncle Stephen as she says, "Good night, everyone." Chapter 8. Now I remember. For 2 or 3 days, everything seems normal, and everyone is happy. Mrs. Black explains that her son had the car keys all along, so they weren't lost after all. Laura watches Mrs. Black closely but decides not to say anything. On Wednesday afternoon, Mom and Dad decide to go walking. Dad groans, "I want to sleep." Mom replies, "No, Andrew, you can't sleep all holiday." "Oh, all right," he says, but he isn't very happy. "What about you, Stephen?" "Come with us," Mom asks. "No, thank you, I must work," Uncle Stephen replies. Auntie Barbara laughs. "Sarah, your husband sleeps all the time and my husband works all the time." "Don't laugh, Barbara," says Uncle Stephen. "My work is very important." Everyone laughs. Sometimes Uncle Stephen can be very funny. "Today, I want to work a lot. Please don't disturb me," he says, and goes into his study. "Can I come with you too?" asks Auntie Barbara. "Of course," they reply. They all put on their walking boots and say goodbye to the twins. Max and Laura decide to explore a different part of the village. There is a small hill with a stone cross at the top. "The village is probably named Stone Cross because of that cross," says Laura. "Very clever, Sherlock," jokes Max. They look up at the cross. 2 people are standing near it. The sun is behind them, so the twins can't see who they are. "Who are those 2 people?" they ask each other. "It's Mrs. Black and Martin Knight," says Max. "Let's go and listen," Max suggests. "No, Max," Laura replies. "We shouldn't." Suddenly she stops. Her face turns pale. "Max, now I remember." Max's face goes pale too. "I know. Me too." "Yes, I know where it comes from," says Laura. "Mrs. Black's earrings," exclaims Max. "It's the same symbol." "And I remember it from Martin Knight's tie," adds Laura. "What does this mean? Mrs. Black and Martin Knight know the thief. Perhaps one of them is the thief." "Do you remember Mrs. Black reading Uncle Stephen's notebook?" asks Max. "Do you remember Martin Knight's strange questions?" replies Laura. "What can we do?" "Come on, Laura." "Follow me," says Max. They start walking up the hill, but when they reach the top, Mrs. Black and Martin Knight are gone. "We're too late," says Laura. "Where are they now?" asks Max. "I don't know," says Laura. "Come on, let's go home and tell Uncle Stephen what we know." As they start walking home, 2 dark shadows watch them from behind the stone cross. Chapter 9. Uncle Stephen understands Uncle Stephen is happy. Finally, he has peace and quiet to work. He makes a cup of tea and goes into his study. On his desk are the Book of Mysteries and the silver brooch with the strange symbol. He picks up the brooch and examines it closely. He knows it's part of the mystery. But how? The circle is similar to Stonehenge. The triangle is similar to the hills surrounding it. But what does the cross mean? Uncle Stephen recognizes the symbol, but he can't remember where from. He drinks some tea and thinks. He looks out of the window. From the window, he can see the strange hill in the village and the stone cross on top of it. Wait a minute, he says to himself. The stone cross. He looks at the brooch again. Yes, it's the same. Quickly, he turns to a page in his book of mysteries. He reads something and exclaims, "Yes! Now I understand. Now I understand." He picks up the phone and dials a number. "Hello, Professor? It's Stephen Morell here. Listen, we must meet. Can I bring the book to you in London? It's not safe here. There's a train at 5 o'clock this evening. It gets to London at 7 o'clock. Can we meet then? Yes. See you at the station. Goodbye, and thank you," Uncle Stephen says as he puts the phone down. He picks up his tea but pauses. "I'm sure that tea's cold now," says a cold voice behind him. He turns quickly and sees Mrs. Black standing in the doorway. Her earrings gleam in the sunlight. "What are you doing here?" he asks angrily. "You don't work today. What do you want?" Mrs. Black smirks. "You know what I want, Morell," she says, stepping forward. "Give me that book." Chapter 10. A Doctor's Visit. Max and Laura play by the river for a while, but soon decide to return to the cottage. When they arrive, the house is unusually quiet. They knock on the door. No one answers. They knock again, and finally, Mrs. Black opens the door. She's wearing an apron and holding a rolling pin. "Hello, children," she says with a forced smile. "I'm making a delicious chocolate cake for lunch. Your Uncle Stephen isn't feeling well, and your parents aren't here, so I thought I'd help out." "What do you mean?" Max asks suspiciously. "Uncle Stephen's fine." Mrs. Black's smile falters. "He has a headache and a temperature. He works too hard." The twins exchange a worried glance. "Uncle Stephen is never ill." "I want to talk to my uncle," says Laura firmly. "Me too," adds Max. Mrs. Black blocks the doorway. "It's not a good idea. Your uncle is upstairs resting. There's a doctor with him now." "I want to see him," Laura insists. "You can't," Mrs. Black snaps, but before she can finish, Laura pushes past her, knocking the rolling pin from her hand. Max follows quickly. The twins race to the study, but Uncle Stephen isn't there. They dash upstairs. "Uncle Stephen? Are you all right?" Laura calls. There's no answer. Max opens the bedroom door, and they both freeze in shock. Uncle Stephen is lying on the bed, tied up with ropes. There's a large bump on his head, and his eyes are closed. "Is he dead?" Laura whispers, her voice trembling. "No, he's breathing," Max replies. "Yes, he's sleeping," says a familiar voice. The twins turn to see Martin Knight standing in the room, grinning. "Your uncle is resting peacefully. Now, we can take his book and uncover the secret of the stones. No one can stop us, especially not two stupid children." At that moment, Mrs. Black storms in, picking up her rolling pin. "I see you've met my son," she sneers. Max realizes her intent. "Quick, Laura," he shouts, pushing his sister to the floor as the rolling pin narrowly misses her head. Max leaps up and tries to wrestle the rolling pin from Mrs. Black. Laura sprints out of the room. Martin Knight lunges to stop her, but she's too quick. Suddenly, the sound of a police siren pierces the air. Mrs. Black and Martin Knight freeze. "The police!" shouts Martin. They rush to the door, but 2 policemen are waiting for them. The officers handcuff the criminals and escort them to a waiting police van. Laura calls for an ambulance while Max speaks to one of the officers. "Thank you," he says, though he looks puzzled. Under a tree in the garden, Max notices an old man. It's Mr. Carter. "Remember, boy," says Mr. Carter, "you must tell me your problems. I know these people. I know this place. I know when there's trouble." "Thank you," says Max gratefully. "You're welcome," Mr. Carter replies with a smile. "Now, how about a nice cup of tea?" Chapter 11. The Secret of the Stones. The next day, everyone gathers at the hospital. Uncle Stephen is in bed, awake but groggy. "The doctor says he'll be fine," Auntie Barbara explains. "Just a nasty bump on the head." Uncle Stephen opens his eyes. "Hello, Barbara. What day is it?" "It's Thursday, darling." "Oh, hello, Andrew. Hello, everyone. What are you doing here? Don't the children have school today?" "It's summer holiday," Laura reminds him. "We're in Stone Cross, remember?" Uncle Stephen frowns. "Stone Cross? Holiday? No, I don't remember." He doesn't remember Mrs. Black, Martin Knight, or the secret of the stones. "You don't remember the symbol? The brooch? The old book of mysteries?" Max asks. Uncle Stephen smiles weakly. "No, sorry." Just then, a policeman arrives with news. Martin Smith and his mother Dorothy Smith are part of a secret organization called the Black Knights. They've been searching for the secret of Stonehenge to gain wealth and power. Mr. Morrell is the only person who knows the secret. "But I don't know the secret," Uncle Stephen insists. "I can't remember." "Perhaps it's for the best," Auntie Barbara says. "The stones can keep their 5,000-year-old secret. It's not right to take it from them." Everyone agrees. "Perhaps we can find another secret on our next holiday," Max and Laura say together. "Perhaps next holiday I'll stay in London," Uncle Stephen replies, rubbing his head. "Poor Uncle Stephen," Laura says, laughing. Everyone joins in. "No more adventures this summer," Max declares, "but maybe at Christmas." The end.